We finally hit the 100 mark. Yes! That was my goal for January, and we hit it before the end of January. I love it. Thank you. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckysphere, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Becky, and every Tuesday and Thursday we talk about the climate here. The problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in and you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. Comment, share, like, all that good stuff. That was in a weird order. Anyways, let's get right into this video. So today we are going to talk about the solar industry. And basically, I'm not going to go into like the science behind how solar panels work. I mean, I have a science background, but I don't want to get into the weeds of those things. If you are interested in more of the technical side, I highly recommend a channel called Just Have a Think, because he does a phenomenal job going in depth on certain solutions, and that does include solar. But today we are going to talk about the industry as a whole, what it's looking like right now, what it means for jobs and economy, future possibilities for the solar industry. So let's get right into it. So in 2019, something crazy happened. For the first time ever, solar became a cheaper option than fossil fuels. Now this is something that no one expected, at least not at the speed in which it occurred, because in just 10 years, a PV solar panel went from costing around $5.79 per watt to only $1.33 per watt. And this was possibly due to a number of different factors. First, in 1954, the PV solar panel that we know today was first invented in the US. The second thing that happened was Germany announced in the year 2000 that it would be ramping up renewable energy production, and it also created a fixed price for renewable energy. The third thing that happened was China started mass producing the PV solar panels, making the overall cost of installing solar panels much cheaper. And the fourth thing that happened was in 2006, the US started incentivizing solar panel installation through an investment tax credit. Now, for a bit of context, PV stands for photovoltaic, and that is the main form of solar panel that's being used because now it is so cheap. But there's a problem here, and namely it's called energy storage, and it has been a huge stifler to the renewable industry. So let's go a little bit into it. I'm not going to get too far into energy storage because that's a whole different video, but it's important for this context, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a little piece of information. So the reason why energy storage is such a big deal is because energy for solar peaks during midday, right? That's when the sun is out the most. But the actual energy consumption doesn't peak until after sunset. So that's a little bit of a discrepancy. The main form of energy storage that is currently being used in the industry is the lithium-ion battery. And up until recently, it was pretty expensive to use, and or it was not the most efficient at actually storing energy for a long period of time. But over the period of time that we have been using lithium-ion batteries, which is not just used in storing energy for renewable energy, it also is used for anything from like your iPhone. So it's an important technology, and we are seeing it become more and more efficient as the market continues to encourage this innovation. And so we are actually seeing the price of lithium-ion batteries drop significantly. In fact, it's supposed to be about $73 per kilowatt hour by around 2023. In addition to that, it's also becoming a lot easier to scale the lithium-ion battery and to use it as a chain storage mechanism. An example of a single lithium-ion battery being used is the Tesla Powerwall, and an example of a larger, more utility use is the Tesla Power Pack. However, it is still relatively expensive to use the lithium-ion battery. This is really where good old market competition has really already started to show its full potential. Companies are popping up left and right claiming that they have the next big battery. There are so many forms of battery creation that is being explored that it's a quite exciting field to be in. And this is all without the battery industry being able to enjoy the same subsidies that wind and solar have. So imagine what would happen if there was a slight increase in incentive. And it doesn't necessarily seem that there's only one niche for battery storage to really thrive in. Because there are so many different variables at play, there's the need for having battery storage for large utility scale endeavors, and there's also ones for small residential needs. Likewise, there's need for storage for just a couple hours, like storing the energy that was produced during midday until the sun goes down and then having it be used then. And there's also the need for maybe energy storage to be used for months, if not years, storing energy for later use. So there are potentially a lot of winners in that industry. It's not necessarily going to just be one beats out all the rest, which is really cool. By the way, slight side note, do you remember that little bit last week when I was learning on air about the difference between PV and concentrated solar power, or CSP? All right, with the second largest then being concentrating solar plants. So what's the difference between solar plants and concentrating solar plants? I don't know. So concentrated versus the photovoltaic in-depth comparison. Okay, so concentrated solar thermal systems produce electric power by converting the sun's energy into high temperature heat using various mirror configurations. Okay, so that's concentrated solar versus the photovoltaic solar panels, which use the sun's light instead. Okay, so one uses heat and the other uses light is what I'm getting from this. So I was kind of right. CSP uses the overall sun's energy to produce power, whereas PV uses sun's light in particular to produce power. However, there are a couple other differences. One is that the CSP method actually has sort of a built-in energy storage mechanism with it, which is called the thermoheating energy storage mechanism. PV does not have that, which is why we had that whole conversation just a minute ago about energy storage, because it's necessary since PV is not able to store its own energy. But another big difference is that PV, due to all the different changes in the market, have become significantly cheaper than the CSP method, which is why PV is more widely used and will probably continue to be the dominant force of solar energy production compared to CSP. So energy storage is just an example of how solar and more generally renewable energy is going to produce a lot of new jobs and economic opportunity, as well as promoting domestic innovation, which is really neat. Creating and installing solar panels itself is already shown to be a huge job and moneymaker. In 2019, it was reported that 250,000 people work in the solar industry in the US. and that the solar industry produced about $18.7 billion for the US economy. This is all according to the Solar Energy Industry Association. 40% of all new energy capacity produced in 2019 was solar, so a lot of solar. And this is only accounting for the fact that the US only relies on solar for 3% of its energy consumption. Imagine if it was more like 20%. That's a lot of jobs and economic boom. And we're seeing a lot, especially from companies, moving towards solar because it is just a cheaper option. And it can be seen as more reliable of an option too, because it will stay at a fixed price for a longer period of time than other forms of energy. And that's great that businesses are moving towards renewable energy because they do account for 2/3 of the US's carbon output. In his book Climate Courage, which we just finished reading last week, the founder of Revolve, Andreas Karelas, gives us plenty of examples of how solar could empower people from disenfranchised communities. One of my favorites involves a company called Solidarity, which was founded in Highland Park, Detroit, which is a historically Black area. And it was also a very dark area because the energy company over there, after making some questionable financial dealings, decided that they wanted to remove all the street lamps from Highland Park because they didn't want to pay for the electricity of them anymore. So Solidarity came about and crowdfunded community-owned solar street lamps to lighten the streets again. And while there definitely are large solar companies that are being produced, a lot for utility purposes, and some old companies that have been in the energy industry for a long time have started to dip their toes into solar, we are seeing a lot of community-based solar projects. And that's encouraging for me because it makes me think that maybe we are moving away from the monopolization of the energy industry. And solar is finding different ways in order to benefit people that might not be able to afford it outright. There are certain loan programs where they either pay just a little bit or none at all and are able to get their solar panels up, and then the solar panels kind of pay themselves off. This is because of the way in which solar is interacting with the grid. If a house has solar on it and it produces a surplus of energy, then you can actually sell your energy produced by your household back into the grid. So in itself, solar is a moneymaker. And also, moving towards renewable energy is great, especially for communities that live near these harmful plants that have been polluting the air and water in those areas. The more that we can decrease that, the better. Now, as I mentioned, Climate Courage's author, Andreas Karelas, is founder and executive director of a company called Revolve. Revolve is a nonprofit that puts solar panels onto nonprofits. And this is because he found a niche where the nonprofits were not getting those tax incentives to put up solar panels as businesses and residents were. And so he decided that this would be a great way to encourage nonprofits from churches. I used to say that when I was a little church. From putting solar panels up on churches, mosques, and smaller nonprofits. So if you go to a place of worship or you work at a nonprofit yourself and they're interested in putting up some solar panels, I would highly recommend, this is just in the US, but I would highly recommend to check out Revolve. It's RE-VOLV. Houses of worship in particular are kind of leading the charge in some areas for moving towards solar. There's many different organizations and programs such as Green the Church that have strengthened the alignment between their faith values and acting on climate change. I believe Green the Church recently also collaborated or joined forces with the Wisconsin Green Muslims. So it's also joining a different face, which is really cool. But for large utility purposes, branching back out from the community-based, there are many different large megawatt projects that are being produced in many locations. One of the largest ones is built by First Solar, and it's actually in Monterey County where I am. First Solar's project in Monterey County spans 2,900 acres of just solar farms. Now that sounds like a lot of land to be taking up. Then you're not alone. That sounded like a lot to me too. But that brings us into some future ideas. One notably is called agrovoltaics. And agrovoltaics basically combines agriculture with solar panels. What it does is it puts solar panels on like kind of above the agricultural fields. And they have actually found, the technicians for the solar panels have actually found that this improves the productivity of solar panels, because solar panels actually thrive in milder climates, usually around the 70s degrees Fahrenheit. And so the plants underneath, through taking up and releasing water, they actually cool the solar plants, allowing them to work better. They work about 3% better than they would without that grouping. And that might not sound like very much, but it definitely adds up in the long run. There's also the method of photovoltaics, and photovoltaics is the equivalent of that, but over bodies of water. Now, my drought-prone California brain was thinking that this sounds like a great way to reduce evaporation instead of putting giant plastic balls on the dams and such. And also, it would potentially reduce the amount of light that gets all the way down into the water, possibly reducing the amount of toxic algal blooms in the water. That's just my thought process, but that's just me. But, you know, there's a lot of cool opportunities that we haven't even explored yet. There's also a project that's being worked on to make solar be useful for heating up rooms. There was a study that found that a certain, I don't have the information in front of me. I'm going off script here. But there was this project, and I'll link it below along with all my other resources and stuff, but there was a video done by SciShow which talked about different inventions for future solar industry projects, and one of which actually used the energy of the sun to bring molecules to a certain different state, and then when a filter was put back over the fluid with those molecules, it brought them back to a different state, and while doing so released a ton of heat. Now they have found, the people doing this work have found that maybe that actually could help heat a room up. It seems like it actually has been able to heat up the space around the fluid by 68 degrees, if I remember correctly. And that's pretty incredible. Engineers are just kind of going crazy in the solar field right now. We've got solar tiles that are being produced to potentially have roads and sidewalks create energy. We are having micro solar panels being put into clothing or pieces of fabric. Oh, there's apparently a company that is starting to make transparent or translucent solar panels so that they can be windows, possibly tinted windows on like office buildings. So while we don't necessarily have all the pieces figured out yet for moving us towards 100% renewable energy, we have like 98%. And the parts that we don't have, we are finding out along the way. Again, imagine if all this was happening with more government support, which is coming. So I'm overall really excited to see where the solar industry goes. And I haven't even gotten yet to the potential for strengthening our national security through solar panels and through possible decentralization of the power grid. That's a whole different video. Stay tuned. So what can you do personally if you are interested in continuing this momentum for the solar industry? Well, one of the most obvious things to do is that if you own your own home and you're able to, I would highly recommend putting up solar panels. They are expensive at first, but as we talked about before, there are tax incentives, and there's also loan programs that could help you pay for it. And over just a couple of months, solar panels have been found to pay themselves off. So it is a worthy investment. But if you're like me and you live in an apartment and you're unable to incentivize your landlord necessarily to put up solar panels, there are certain ways to support the solar industry. For example, in California, PG&E has an option to switch to only renewable energy when they are lighting your house. So if that is something available to you in your utility company, then definitely check that out and utilize that program. If you know of any nonprofits that would be interested in the US, check out Revolve to help put solar panels up on their roofs. Revolve also has a solar ambassador program, so if you yourself are interested in getting into the solar industry, which is just going to keep booming, then I would highly recommend checking that out too. Consider if you happen to be someone who wants to have more of a hands-on career, to join what is being called the green collar economy, which is basically the growing industry of jobs being created by renewable energy and other climate solutions industries. So that's overall very exciting. And again, I highly recommend you check out the Climate Courage book for many reasons, but one of which he talks about how many different solar companies that we know of today, such as Sunrun and Solar City and Grid Alternatives, got their start and made an impact in their community and abroad. So that is basically my overall rant about the solar industry. What did I miss? Please let me know in the comments below. And also let me know what industry you want me to cover next in the form of renewable energy. I'm feeling that offshore wind because I do love a good offshore wind. On Thursday, when we usually have the book club, which we usually have the book club at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursdays, it's a live stream. But this week, instead of doing that live stream, I am going to interview Andreas Karelas. So I'll be recording that interview tomorrow and I'll have it up hopefully around Thursday at 6 p.m. So yay, look forward to that. That'll be great. And then, oh, I have so many plans. Because we are heading towards the end of January, I will also be doing my monthly climate recap to look at all the things that happened in January relating to climate change and what we should be expecting for February. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you all on Thursday, and remember to talk about the climate every day because that is one of the best things you can do for the environment. Bye.